Hello everyone, welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is, I used to love camping. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. Some of my best memories as a teenager were of camping with my best friend and his folks. For the sake of both context and brevity, I didn't have a great home life, and his parents were happy to take in a stray for as many days out of the week as I could stay away without my mom coming looking. I'd spend more or less my whole summer with them, stopping home to do my laundry and whatever chores I needed to keep from catching a beating for not pulling my weight, as my parents put it. So, when summer started coming to a close, my friend, let's call him Mike, and his folks would head on up to their favorite off-the-beaten-path campsite in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. After having spent around 4 or 5 days at Mike's a week and getting my own mattress on the floor of his room, they invited me up with them to pitch a tent and watch a meteor shower away from all the city light. Naturally, I was thrilled. The first few trips were great. Mike's dad teaching me how to fish, riding down the river in tubes, hiking the trails, and hot dogs over the fire. But every trip we saw something just a little off. Something that kept Mike and I quiet by the fire when his sister and her boyfriend shared ghost stories. It started with a fairly innocuous occurrences, like finding a child's shoe caught in the weeds by the river with a rusty old hatchet stuck into a nearby tree, or hearing our footsteps echoed through an empty part of the forest when we went off looking for morels. Stuff we could shake off as just simply coincidence or imagination. I think it was my third trip with them that things started getting harder to explain away. It was getting to be about dusk, and Mike's dad suggested we should go looking for more branches to bolster our woodpile before it gets top dark. So we headed down the path to the place Mike called the Witch's Cauldron, a 50-foot wide gravel pit that looked like a proper crater, with the forest hills climbing 40 feet up around most of it. We made our way up one side and back under the trees, me grabbing branches off the ground and Mike whirling a stout little stick tied to a length of rope, searching for dead branches higher up he could yank down. After 20 or so minutes of this, we flipped on our flashlights and started our walk back through the now shadowed wood when we heard what sounded like a tree being felled nearby. This obviously scared the crap out of us. We picked up the pace a little after tossing insults back and forth for being jumpy when we heard it again, closer. Mike said it might be an elk rutting or something, but we stepped quicker still until we heard a branch snap in front of us. We stopped, sweeping our lights in front of us, and caught a pair of eyes about 30 feet in front of us between some trees. All I could manage to notice before we took off sprinting was how high they were off the ground, taller than a bear standing, and too big besides. We made it back, panting, no wood in hand, babbling about seeing something with eyes the size of baseballs and antlers 10 feet up. His dad telling us it was probably an elk and the shadows playing tricks on us. We ate the fish we caught earlier, happy enough no one wanted to talk about whatever it was we might have seen, and ready to head home. Over the next year, it becomes a joke between us. the woodsman coming to take back his kindling and maybe you for dinner. We convinced ourselves it was nothing, but by our next trip early the following summer, decided to stay clear of that patch of forest. After spending a morning trying to catch some crawfish, but only finding a handful, we head down a trail leading up a ridge overlooking the river. We wandered off the trail just a bit with Mike's assurance that he knows these woods. After all, he's come here nearly every year since he was 6. After a little while, I noticed the trail is gone. It was only a little ways behind us, but I could see it just a minute ago. Mike tells me to stop being a wimp. He knows where we are. No need to worry. I pushed down the sudden spike of fear, remembering all too well what we couldn't quite see last time. I tell him we're lost. No, we're not. Just follow me. Are you sure? Shut up, yeah. And on for the next few minutes. He tells me the path is just back here, past these trees. So I asked, okay, then why are you breathing so hard? Then he stopped. I'm not, he said. Shh. Sure enough, he heard the panting too, and motioned me to stay still and quiet while he reached for the Bowie knife his dad gave him for Christmas that year. The panting got quieter. Then a twig snapped, and with it, the last of our courage. We sprinted towards where Mike said the path was, and nearly took down his dad and the tents once we cleared the trees. How did we end up back at our campsite on the other side of the river? I yelled at him that we were lost and he was a butthole. He points out that there's only the one bridge, and we didn't cross the river. We spent the next day by our tent, not at all eager to go wandering off. Headed into town for dinner, and then home the following morning. A few months later, his parents decided to take another trip back to the campground to watch a meteor shower. Naturally, I don't want frickin' anything to do with those woods, but wanted less to do with my parents fighting and taking out their frustrations on me, and I didn't want Mike wandering out there alone, I told myself. He tells me we're gonna find out what's going on out there. I say I'd rather not and just have a nice trip. Oh well. We made camp later than usual, delayed because of the traffic heading north. So we decided against taking the hike to the tallest hill to watch the shower. Late that night, Mike woke me up, asking if I heard whispers. I tell him to shut his trap. That's not funny. It's probably your sister and her boyfriend making out or something. He shoves a piece of quartz into my hand, explaining that his sister used to date a new agey fella who fancied himself a warlock, and that it's supposed to be protective crystal or something. I say whatever, and that we should go back to sleep. The next day, his parents ask if we want to tackle a trail. Mike says we were gonna go looking for firewood and fish for a bit. They take off, and Mike shoves this stupid piece of quartz back into my hand. Holding on to it, he says, we head back to the same trail we took last time. He points out that the trail is the only way back to our site. We couldn't have just got turned around. I say we should head back, but he keeps on, and I follow. We get to a fork in the path neither of us remember. One side continuing more or less along the ridge, the other overgrown and winding deeper into the wood. Of course, He wants to follow that one. We stumble through the brush, with me telling him this is pointless and not even a trail. He smugly pulls aside a fern to show the waist-high trail marker. We kept on until we heard what sounded like drums coming from up ahead. I asked if he heard it too, and got a quick nod and quicker pace in response. We crest another low hill, the drumming getting louder, and I asked how far we walked, because I couldn't hear the river anymore, that it should be just past the trees on our left. He just shrugs. The drums pound away. We reach the bottom of the hill, and Mike yells out, "Holy crap!" I turned to see what he's shouting about. Just off the path, on our right, is some sort of carved tree, like a totem with withered faces on it, and a crow nailed into one's eye. The drums stopped. Heck no, we're turning back right now. He opened his mouth, and a second later I heard an okay. We stare at each other. Did that just happen? I tried to say, but cut off when nothing left my mouth until a few moments later, like an echo. I turned around to head back, and something giggles. Waist-high shadows dart through the brush just off the path. The giggling gets louder, and we start running in what feels like slow motion. The shadows follow us. We made it to the top of the hill, and panic really sets in. The path is gone. I looked around frantically, and Mike grabs me and points back where we came from. The totem thing is gone, replaced by glowing red spots like eyes. Dozens of frickin' eyes. We picked a direction and ran. It didn't matter where, just not here. I tripped over a log and let out a crap. Mike pulls me. We're back at the start of the knot trail, scrambling back down the ridge path I gave a start. It felt like I was holding a hot coal. In our panic, I forgot about the quartz I was holding. I open my hands and find a now blackened crystal. He just stares at me and pulls out his. The same. We toss them into the woods behind and run to camp. We spent the rest of the day silent, ignoring his sister asking us what our problem is. His parents came back and said we were gonna take the car up a little 2-track trail they found to a nearby hill and watch the shower. I stared at the sky for an hour or two, just trying to forget the strangeness of that afternoon. We hear a tree fall in the distance, then another. We all looked off to see what was happening. Then a tall pine at the edge of the clearing lit up, like it was painted in gold on a black canvas. The light seeming to come from the tree itself. His dad takes a lamp to investigate, despite our pleas to head back. After 15 excruciating minutes of waiting, he walks back and announces, "We're headed back." Mike asks if he saw anything. Nothing worth mentioning, he tells us. We don't bother with getting the fire started again and head to bed. The next morning, Mike tells me he felt like something was watching him and he couldn't sleep. We notice our rain flap untied on one side, and just outside of it, 2 black crystals laying on the ground. Once we all had our coffee, his dad said to pack it in. We're leaving early, Something about forgetting some work he had to do for Monday. We were just happy to go. When we got back to his house, Mike tells me he kept the now black quartz. Said he couldn't leave without at least some proof something happened. Over the next few years, we drifted apart. Me making more friends and finding safe harbor to stay away from home. Him heading to church twice a week and joining the Marines. We forgot about the strangeness of those trips mostly, or at least stopped bringing it up, but his family never went back there. Last week, while mowing my lawn, I ran over a rock. It shot out of the side and gave me a finger-long gash on my ankle. I picked it up, and wouldn't you know, it's blackened chunks of quartz. I threw it in the road on my way to work. But I still flinch whenever I hear a kid outside laugh.